Welcome back to Narrative Network. What would you do if someone you loved was hurt by the very person meant to protect them? This is the powerful story of Melanie and Jordan, whose lives are forever changed when a racist cop assaults Melanie, a pregnant black woman, during a routine errand. But what happens next will leave you speechless. As her husband fights for justice, the cop's life takes an unexpected turn, leading to a stunning conclusion that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Stay with us until the end to witness this emotional journey of resilience, justice, and redemption. If you're ready to be inspired by this gripping tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's uncover this incredible story together. It was a quiet summer evening in the suburban neighborhood where Melanie Carter and her husband, Jordan, lived. Melanie was 7 months pregnant, and they had spent the day preparing for the arrival of their first child. The nursery was nearly ready, filled with soft pastel colors and tiny baby clothes. As they wrapped up for the night, Jordan suggested a quick trip to the nearby convenience store to pick up a few last-minute items for dinner. "I'll come with you," Melanie offered, resting her hand on her growing belly. "Are you sure?" Jordan asked, concerned. "You've been on your feet all day." "I need some air," she replied with a smile. "Besides, it's just a quick trip." The couple stepped into the warm evening air, their fingers intertwined. It was supposed to be a simple outing, but what unfolded next would change their lives forever. As they parked outside the small convenience store, the neighborhood was quiet. Jordan helped Melanie out of the car, and they walked toward the entrance, chatting about baby names. Just as they reached the store, a police cruiser pulled up, its lights flashing. An officer, identified by his badge as Officer Dean, stepped out. His sharp, judgmental eyes scanned the couple, lingering on Melanie's pregnant form and Jordan's protective stance. "You two," the officer barked. "What are you doing here?" Jordan exchanged a puzzled glance with Melanie. "We're just here to grab a few things," he said calmly. Officer Dean's expression darkened. "This isn't a hangout spot. You people need to keep moving." Melanie's brow furrowed. "We're customers. Why would we leave?" The officer's demeanor shifted from irritation to hostility. "Don't get smart with me," he snapped, stepping closer. "I said, move along, eh?" Jordan stepped forward, his tone firm but respectful. "Officer, we're not causing any trouble. We're just here to shop." But Officer Dean wasn't listening. He glared at Melanie, his disdain evident. "You think you can talk back to me? You'd better watch your tone." As Melanie tried to de-escalate the situation, she accidentally stumbled backward, bumping into the officer's cruiser. Dean's reaction was instant and violent. "You clumsy!" he growled. And before anyone could react, he kicked Melanie in the abdomen. Melanie cried out in pain, clutching her stomach as she collapsed to the ground. Jordan rushed to her side, his heart racing. "Melanie, are you okay?" he asked, his voice trembling with fear. Tears streamed down Melanie's face as she struggled to catch her breath. "The baby," she whispered. Jordan's eyes blazed with anger as he looked up at Officer Dean. "What the hell is wrong with you? She's pregnant." Dean took a step back, his face a mixture of panic and defiance. "She shouldn't have bumped into me," he muttered, attempting to justify his actions. "You're going to pay for this," Jordan said, his voice low and dangerous. A small crowd began to gather, drawn by the commotion. Some pulled out their phones, recording the scene as Jordan called for an ambulance. The bystanders' murmurs of disbelief and outrage filled the air. At the hospital, Melanie was rushed into emergency care. Jordan paced the waiting room, his mind racing with worry and anger. The baby's health was all he could think about, but the image of Officer Dean's smug face lingered in his mind. Hours later, a doctor emerged with an update. "Your wife and baby are stable," she said. "There was some trauma, but it doesn't appear to have caused lasting damage. We'll need to monitor her closely for the remainder of the pregnancy." Relief washed over Jordan, but it was quickly replaced by a burning desire for justice. "Thank you, doctor," he said, his voice steady. As Melanie rested, Jordan began making calls. He wasn't going to let what happened go unpunished. Jordan contacted a civil rights lawyer, Maria Harris, known for taking on cases of police misconduct. He explained everything that had happened, including the video footage captured by bystanders. "This is outrageous," Maria said, after reviewing the evidence. "Officer Dean's actions were not only cruel, but blatantly illegal. We're going to hold him accountable." Maria filed a formal complaint against Officer Dean, and the case quickly gained media attention. News outlets picked up the story, and the video footage went viral, sparking outrage across the country. Community leaders and activists rallied around Melanie and Jordan, organizing protests and demanding justice. The incident became a flashpoint for discussions about systemic racism and police brutality, with Melanie's story at the center. As the case moved forward, Officer Dean was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. Maria and her legal team worked tirelessly to build their case, gathering witness statements, medical records, and footage from the scene. In court, Maria argued passionately. Officer Dean's actions were not only reckless, but rooted in prejudice. He attacked a vulnerable, pregnant woman without provocation. This cannot be allowed to stand. Dean's defense, we attempted to paint the incident as an unfortunate misunderstanding, but the evidence was damning. Witnesses testified about his aggressive behavior, and the video footage left little room for doubt. After weeks of testimony, the jury returned a verdict. Officer Dean was found guilty of assault and misconduct. He was sentenced to prison and stripped of his badge. Outside the courthouse, Jordan and Melanie stood together, holding hands as reporters surrounded them. "This isn't just about us," Jordan said. "It's about ensuring no one else has to go through what we did. We're fighting for accountability and change." In the months that followed, Melanie gave birth to a healthy baby boy, whom they named Justice, a reminder of the battle they had fought and won. Jordan and Melanie continued to advocate for police reform, working with organizations to promote accountability and racial equity. Their story became a symbol of resilience and the power of standing up for what's right. As they looked at their son, they knew they had turned a moment of pain into a legacy of hope and change. Months after Justice's birth, Melanie and Jordan found themselves at the center of a growing movement for police reform. Their story had inspired not only their local community, but also people nationwide who were tired of witnessing unchecked police misconduct. The couple was approached by activists and community leaders who wanted to collaborate on initiatives aimed at systemic change. Jordan, once a quiet and reserved man, found his voice through this fight. He began speaking at rallies, sharing his family's story and calling for accountability. Melanie, though still recovering from the trauma, used her platform to advocate for better training and oversight in police departments, emphasizing the need for empathy and fairness. They established the Justice Foundation, named after their son, to provide legal assistance to victims of police misconduct and to fund community-based programs that built trust between law enforcement and citizens. Their work resonated with people from all walks of life, and the foundation quickly grew into a prominent force for change. While the court's decision had brought some measure of justice, Officer Dean's actions continued to haunt him. Public outcry against his behavior was fierce, and his name became synonymous with the abuse of power. Once a respected figure in his department, Dean now faced widespread condemnation. In prison, he began to confront the consequences of his actions. He was enrolled in mandatory therapy and restorative justice programs, where he was forced to reflect on his behavior and hear from victims of similar incidents. For the first time, Dean began to understand the deep pain and systemic injustices he had been a part of. Dean wrote a letter to Melanie and Jordan, expressing remorse. "I can never undo the harm I caused," he wrote, "but I want you to know that your courage has opened my eyes. I am truly sorry, and I am working to become a better person." Melanie and Jordan were skeptical of his sincerity, but recognized that true change required not just punishment, but education and growth. They chose not to respond directly, but continued their work to ensure accountability within law enforcement. The Justice Foundation focused on bridging the gap between law enforcement and the communities they served. One of their first major initiatives was a series of town hall meetings where residents and police officers could openly discuss their concerns and ideas for improvement. At one such meeting, Melanie spoke passionately. "I'm not here to vilify every officer," she said. "I'm here to ensure that those who serve and protect do so with integrity and respect. We all deserve to feel safe, no matter who we are or where we come from." The crowd erupted in applause, and several officers approached her afterward to thank her for her words. They admitted that they too wanted to see change within their ranks and were committed to being part of the solution.
As justice grew, he became a symbol of hope and resilience for his family and the community. Melanie and Jordan often brought him to events and meetings, reminding everyone of what they were fighting for: a future where children could grow up free from fear and discrimination. Justice, with his curious eyes and infectious laughter, brought light to even the darkest moments. "He's our miracle," Melanie often said. "He reminds us every day why this work matters." The Justice Foundation's success inspired similar initiatives across the country. Other families who had experienced police brutality reached out to Melanie and Jordan for guidance and support. Together, they built a network of organizations dedicated to reforming law enforcement and advocating for victims' rights. At a national summit on police reform, Jordan was invited to deliver the keynote speech. Standing before a packed auditorium, he shared their journey with raw honesty. "We didn't choose this fight," he began. "But when injustice knocked on our door, we chose to stand up. We chose to fight for accountability, for fairness, and for the future of our children. And together we can create a world where no family has to endure what we did." His words were met with a standing ovation, solidifying the Carters' place as leaders in the fight for justice. Years later, Melanie and Jordan were honored with a prestigious award for their contributions to social justice and police reform. The ceremony was attended by leaders, activists, and families who had been impacted by their work. Justice, now a bright and curious boy, sat proudly in the front row, clapping enthusiastically for his parents. In her acceptance speech, Melanie reflected on their journey. "What happened to us was a nightmare," she said. "But from that pain, we found purpose. We turned our anger into action, our fear into courage, and our tragedy into hope. This work is far from over, but together we've proven that change is possible." As the audience rose to their feet, Melanie and Jordan held hands, their hearts full. They knew their fight wasn't just about their family. It was about creating a legacy of justice, accountability, and compassion. As Justice grew older, he became deeply inspired by his parents' work. He often sat with them at the dinner table, listening to stories of the lives they had touched and the change they had sparked through their foundation. These conversations ignited a fire within him, and he began to see himself not just as their son, but as part of their mission. At 17, Justice organized his first event, a youth summit focused on empowering young people to stand against injustice. Held in the same community where his parents' journey had begun, the event was a resounding success. Hundreds of students attended workshops on advocacy, leadership, and community organizing. Justice's passion and eloquence were undeniable, and by the end of the day, he had earned a standing ovation. "You're a natural leader, son," Jordan told him that evening. "Your voice has the power to inspire others, just like your mother's does." Justice smiled. "I've had the best teachers." Years after his conviction, Officer Dean reached out to Melanie and Jordan once more. Now a reformed man, Dean had spent his time in prison, reflecting on his actions and the systemic issues that had enabled his behavior. Upon his release, he dedicated himself to becoming an advocate for police reform, working with organizations to address the culture of discrimination within law enforcement. At first, Melanie and Jordan were hesitant to engage with him. The trauma he had caused was still fresh in their minds, and they were wary of his motives. But after several heartfelt letters and an invitation to meet in person, they agreed. In a quiet conference room at the Justice Foundation's headquarters, Dean sat across from the couple. His voice was steady but filled with remorse. "I can never undo the harm I caused," he began, "but I want to spend the rest of my life making sure no one else has to suffer like you did." Melanie looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "Words are one thing, Officer Dean. Actions are another. If you're serious about this, prove it." Dean nodded. "I will." In the years that followed, Dean became a vocal advocate for mandatory de-escalation training, implicit bias education, and community-led policing initiatives. Though the Carters never fully forgave him, they acknowledged his efforts and recognized the value of his perspective in the fight for change. Inspired by their son's success with the Youth Summit, Melanie and Jordan decided to create the Justice Leadership Academy, a program designed to empower the next generation of activists and leaders. The Academy offered scholarships, mentorship, and hands-on training in advocacy and public policy. Justice, now a college student studying law, became one of the Academy's most passionate mentors. He worked closely with students, sharing his family's story and encouraging them to find their own voices. One of the Academy's first graduates, a young woman named Ava, went on to become a prominent civil rights attorney. At her graduation ceremony, she credited the Carters with changing her life. "Because of this family, I found my purpose," Ava said. "Their fight for justice has inspired me to fight for others." The Justice Foundation's influence extended beyond the United States, with chapters opening in countries around the world. Melanie and Jordan traveled to international conferences, sharing their story and collaborating with activists fighting similar battles in their own communities. In South Africa, they worked with organizations addressing police brutality and systemic racism. In the UK, they partnered with advocates for criminal justice reform. Their message of accountability, empathy, and resilience resonated universally, and their work became a beacon of hope for people everywhere. On the 25th anniversary of the Justice Foundation, the family hosted a massive event to celebrate their achievements and honor the lives they had touched. Justice, now a young lawyer and a leader in the foundation, took the stage to deliver the keynote speech. "My parents taught me that change isn't something you wait for, it's something you create," Justice said, his voice filled with conviction. "They showed me that even in the face of unimaginable pain, we can rise, we can fight, and we can build a better world. This foundation is proof of what's possible when we refuse to give up." As he spoke, Melanie and Jordan watched with pride, their hands clasped tightly. They had started this journey to seek justice for themselves, But it had become so much more. A movement, a mission, a legacy. In their later years, Melanie and Jordan reflected on the incredible journey they had taken. They had turned a moment of pain and injustice into a lifelong commitment to making the world a better place. Their story had inspired countless others to take a stand, and their foundation had created a ripple effect of change that spanned generations. Justice, now leading the foundation alongside his parents, carried their work forward with the same passion and determination they had instilled in him. Together, they continued to fight for a world where dignity, fairness, and compassion were not exceptions, but the rule. And as they looked back on their journey, they knew one thing for certain. Their fight for justice had not only changed their lives, but had left an indelible mark on the world. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more powerful and thought-provoking content. Share this video with your friends and family to spread the message of resilience and justice. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below, and we'll see you in the next video.